Welcome to the last part of Archimedes the Owl. I want you to take a look at some of these images of Merlin the magician. Because he's a fictitious character, he and Archimedes can look however our imaginations make them look. He's been portrayed many different ways. Before there was Harry Potter with his white owl, there was Archimedes and Merlin the magician. Hello, my talented artists. Welcome to the last section of Archimedes the Owl. So I'm going to be showing you how to use the complementary colors that you've mixed, plus the owl head inspired by Stephen Partridge, to put it all together to make a really cool Archimedes artwork. These are the materials that you'll need: a pair of scissors, the papers that you have pre-painted, mixing the complementary colors. You'll need the owl head that you've previously made, and a black piece of paper. Mine is 9 by 12. You'll need a white and yellow oil pastel. If you don't have oil pastels, you can use crayon. You'll need a black piece of paper. Mine is 9 by 12. So let's get started. The first thing I'm going to do is get a piece of my pre-painted complementary color with texture paper. I'm going to fold that in half. Next, I'm going to open it back up, and right along the crease that I've created, I'm going to take my scissors and cut. So I'm creating a belly, the center part for my Archimedes owl. I need to, as an artist, decide if I want the textured painted side to show, or if I want it to give my Archimedes a white belly. I think I prefer the colored and textured side. So I'm going to put it in front of myself, and I'm going to glue the head that I've created to one of the corners of my paper. Remember, a little glue goes a long way. Next, you can see that the bottom of his belly is kind of pointed, and I don't want it to be hard like that. So I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to cut off that corner. I'm cutting it so that it's more rounded and feels more organic, like a real owl's belly would be. Next, I'm going to flip over my head and belly and paint a little bit of glue along the top of the head and around that body shape. Now notice, when I'm applying my glue, I don't have my black paper underneath me. I wouldn't want to get glue in places that I didn't intend to have it. Now it's time to decide where I'm going to place Archimedes on my paper. I could center him. I could put him on an angle so it looks like he's soaring in the sky, but I really want to make sure that I don't put him too close to the bottom or the top of my paper, because I won't have room to create his wings. So I want to visually make sure that I have enough room for wings on either side of him. So now it's time to create those wings that we've been talking about. So I cut off another piece of my complementary colors that I've used, the previous paper we painted, and I'm going to do what's called a guided rip. So at first you might think, well, I want to use my scissors to cut the feathers for Archimedes. But remember that Archimedes is a living thing. It means that he is organic. So organic and living things are not perfect. And the ripping will create a fluffier texture so it will feel like real feathers. But notice how I keep my fingers very close to the area that I'm ripping so that it's very controlled in a way. So I'm going to rip this entire paper into about French fry thickness strips. Now once I have all of my French fries here, then I'm going to take each one and rip each French fry once. So I'm taking one fry, ripping it into two. I don't want you to keep ripping and ripping because we don't want our feathers to become too tiny. So this will essentially be the perfect size. Notice how I'm keeping all of my ripped feathers in a pile so that I don't lose them. Now it's time to glue. So I'm going to take my glue brush, or if you have a glue bottle, you can squeeze it out. But notice how I am painting a line of glue right where Archimedes' head starts to touch his body. I'm going to extend this line of glue all the way out as far to the edges of my paper as I can. Because remember, an owl has a very long, wide wingspan. So I want to make Archimedes' wings as long as I possibly can. Next, I'm going to take my pile of feathers and I'm going to lay them on top of the glue. As I lay them, I keep in mind that I want to overlap, just slightly covering the piece next to it so that Archimedes doesn't have any holes in his feathers. We don't want to see any of the black paper showing through. So once I do one side, I want his wings to be symmetrical. Remember, symmetrical means the same, a mirror image of each side. And I'm slowly and carefully laying down his first layer of wings. Notice that I'm also not laying my feathers perfectly flat. I'm allowing the bottom part of the feather to lift off of the page. I feel like this makes it look more feathery. It mirrors more of the texture of what a real feather would look like. So once I do my first layer, I'm going to go back in, and underneath those pieces of paper, I'm going to add a little bit more glue, and I'm going to do a second layer. This time I'm going to come in slightly closer to his belly. I want to make sure those sharp parts of the rectangle shape that we started with are covered. Now that I have a second layer, I'm going to get yet another piece of my pre-painted textured paper, and I'm going to do the guided rip. Okay, so I want to add a different texture, a different color combination to make Archimedes just that more interesting. So again, just a reminder, once you have your French fry shapes, then you take each French fry and rip it once in half, making yourself a nice pile of new feathers. And then we repeat. So I'm putting my glue. I kind of lift up my previous layer of feathers because I really want to make sure that as I'm adding this new texture and color, that I'm overlapping, that there are no holes showing through Archimedes' wings. Remember that he is a magical bird, so we don't want him to appear as if he's wilting or sickly. We want a nice, healthy, beautiful owl. Next, I repeat the same step of layering and laying my feathers down until visually as an artist, I feel like Archimedes' wings look beautiful and full. Now, when you're finished, you'll probably have some extra paper left over, which is fine. I always say it's better to have more materials than you need instead of not enough. So you'll need your white and yellow oil pastels. Remember, if you don't have oil pastels, you can use crayon. So the first decision you need to make is where you're going to put the moon in the sky. Okay, so I'm deciding to do a crescent moon, so I start with a C, and I'm going to make my moon white. Then I start at the tip of that C and just kind of mirror the curve, just smaller, and I color it in very neatly. Now you could have totally chosen yellow to create your moon. It's just whatever you prefer. Next, I'm going to use my yellow to outline. I like doing this because I feel like it just makes things look more glowing and mystical, and we are definitely creating a mystical scene here. Very magical. Next, we're going to fill our sky with stars. So you can decide to make your stars white. You can make yours yellow. I'm choosing to make mine white. So if you have trouble drawing a star, you can use lines and then color around the lines that you create. So I usually make sure that I have 5 lines pointing in various directions, and then I just color in the thickness so it appears as if I drew a star when really I'm just making some lines that are a bit thicker. Now remember, when you look at a starry night in the sky, the stars appear all over the place. So you would have stars at the bottom of Archimedes, at the top of Archimedes. Spread them out. Make sure you have variety. Some bigger, some smaller.